All right, it's Joseph Brasher from Top Velocity Northwest. I'm doing an analysis of Oscar, and I'm pairing him up with 90 mile an hour, 95 mile an hour testimonial Colton Turner. So let's take both these guys into their lifts. Okay, Oscar's lift, Colton's lift. Now with Oscar, he seems to be kind of stalling out in his leg lift, and even looks like he's ready to go down immediately out of that leg lift. As we come into our leg lift, we want to shift a little momentum this way, definitely not down. I mean, we do want a flexed back leg, but we're just kind of stalling out right here and then going back down. So I wouldn't say this is a necessarily efficient leg lift. Um, but it doesn't have that much impact on the delivery. Let's just see what happens. But I'd like to see as he lifts up, maybe shifting his hips a little bit forward this way to help get that force vector in line, as opposed to sinking straight down as he is here. Another thing I'd like to comment on is Oscar appears to be hooking the rubber. Now, there are pros and cons to this approach. I prefer our foot to be flush against the rubber. So if this was the rubber here, if you're looking at a bird's eye view, and this was our foot, I prefer it to be flush like this. It just makes it easier to grip with the toes and drive, as opposed to hooking it, which can put your knee in a difficult position. If anything, Oscar's foot, it looks like it's more in this position here, which is just gonna make it more difficult to get those hips through. It's sort of a preference thing, but I prefer the back foot to be flush against it. It's just going to help support the loading of the back leg, just as you can see with Colton here. But let's go through the rest of the delivery. Now we want to go forward and down with our hips at the same rate. Let's see how Oscar follows that line. So you see he goes straight down first before going out. This is not an effective path. Okay, quickest or shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. We want to take a straight line to landing, just as Colton Turner is going to do. Let's look at this path. See his hips follow that path pretty effectively. That's going to do a couple of things. One, load this back leg so the force vector's in a linear direction, but two, also give us flexion in that back leg and the ability to push off it. If you look at Oscar, that foot has shifted. So if this is the rubber again, his foot is now like this. That's going to make it hard for him to push off, and it shows that he probably has some hip mobility restraints, as his force vector hasn't moved at all. It's completely straight up and down, and if anything, it might even be pointing a little bit this way. So it's going to be very difficult for him to drive effectively. Let's get that foot flush on the rubber. Let's stop hooking the rubber, and that's really going to help improve our hip our hip positioning. Our hip positioning as we move down. As you can see, like, he's loaded in the hip here. The knee is turned out, but there isn't a lot of stability in this position. It's going to be very difficult to drive the hip through. Right here, as Colton gets closer to front foot strike, he does have load in this knee, but he's flush against the rubber. It's going to be much easier for him to push. If you look at the angle of the force vectors here, we have 47 degrees, which is a great angle. If you look at Oscar, he's all the way up at 72, which is going to be very hard to push in a linear direction. Now, if you take him further, like I said, he went down and then out. We want to take this direction. It's more efficient. So he's going to have to go out and swing that front leg to start generating some momentum. Colton is just riding that momentum from his leg lift into front foot strike. So as he gets to his low position, he opens up here. He's able to drive that back leg through and separate his hips and shoulders. Let's look at Oscar here. So as you can see, Oscar's a knee slammer. So his knee was in this upright position. Now he's going to slam it down. This is effective at creating force, but it's not effective at opening up the hips, which is what we really want. We want to create that hip to shoulder separation to help us multiply the forces and get more speed on the ball. So because his force vector was so high, he had no choice but to slam his knee down to get into front foot strike. So as he moves into there and he cocks his arm, he's already in some shoulder rotation. His hips and shoulders are pretty much synced up through this whole delivery. So Oscar has said that he's low 80s. There's a lot of potential here, as he's not getting much hip to shoulder separation to really multiply his velocity and get into the mid 80s pretty easily. If he were to correct these movements at the beginning, get his foot flush against the rubber, and learn how to drive his back leg through to open up those hips, as opposed to slam his knee down, which is what he's doing right now. And even delay arm cocking. So as he lands completely, he's already into external rotation. So his shoulders are way ahead of where they need to be. If you look at Colton Turner as he lands right there, he's just coming into full cocking. His shoulders are completely closed and back. Oscar's already rotating right here. So that's a big difference. Loading better with this back leg, driving it through to open up those hips, and then delaying those shoulders just like Colton Turner is will be key to putting on some velocity, which I think definitely can be achievable here. We take him through the rest of the delivery. Colton gets plenty hip to shoulder separation. Oscar doesn't really get much at all. His hips open there, and his arms right there, actually slightly hyperangulating. So what's happening is his arm's getting caught behind the plane of his shoulders, or the scapular plane. That's called hyperangulation. It's very dangerous, very bad for the arm. Colton Turner, it's not really happening as he goes into external internal rotation here. And Oscar, we're seeing a pushing motion here. His elbow's out in front of his face. Okay, that's not good. That's going to delay pronation, which protects the elbow. So we see a lot of this movement back and forth with the elbow. We just want it to load into supination and external rotation and then unload into internal rotation, which he's using too much of the arm and elbow to help create the velocity because of the deficiencies back here with the lower body, not being able to drive and separate. It didn't give his arm and upper body time to load and get that energy up the chain. He does have a decent front leg. He gets somewhat of a decent forward trunk tilt here, 50 degrees. That's not bad. I'd like to see more though. The fact that he created force with his back leg and slammed his knee meant that there was some linear power there. This wasn't any hip rotation. Colton's at 46 degrees, so your trunk's pretty close. Front leg is not bad. But what really is causing all the problems is everything that happened earlier in the delivery. So let's talk about the actionable steps we're going to take here. Coming out of the delivery, not going straight down, not staying vertical on this back leg, but instead loading this way linearly, getting that force vector in line. So now we're in a position to drive the back leg through, not just slam the knee down. So we can open up those hips, separate, delay our arm more, delay our shoulders more. It'll give us more time to load this arm correctly into external rotation back here and up here, and it'll uncoil correctly. Not only will it multiply Oscar's velocity, but it'll also help his arm health quite a bit. So that's my pitching analysis of Oscar. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you guys next time.